Dr. Grant Patrick. The Redheads, Unforgettable Grandpa's Fairy Tales. Chapter 2. The Poison Ivy Peril. A soft mist curled through the whispering woods, weaving a mysterious veil under the thick canopy of trees. The early morning air was alive with quiet magic, as though the forest itself was whispering its gratitude. Every redhead, still bandaged and nursing the stinging reminders of yesterday's battle, felt the pulse of the woods beneath their feet, a silent thank you from the elder oak. Their movements were slow, exhaustion lingering in their limbs, but their hearts were buoyant. Saving the elder oak had rekindled their spirits, leaving behind a peaceful stillness that seemed to float in the air. They had done their part, and the forest, vibrant and alive, seemed to hum its approval. At breakfast, the redheads gathered around a large stone table, a centerpiece of the woods, worn smooth from years of stories and meals shared. The redhead's story paused here as Grandpa's voice carried on. The boy's wide, curious eyes shimmered with the question he'd asked the day before: were the redheads real heroes? Grandpa's voice, warm and steady, carried through the air, continuing the tale that had captivated his grandson. He leaned in closer, the corners of his mouth curling into a knowing smile. "Heroes don't wear capes or carry swords, my boy," he said, his eyes twinkling like the morning dew. "They just have brave hearts, and that's what the redheads had in abundance." The boy clutched his pillow tighter, his face a picture of seriousness as he absorbed every word. The story resumed as the redheads prepared for a new challenge. After a hearty breakfast of foraged berries, nut bread, and a drizzle of honey, the redheads got to work, their spirits renewed despite the soreness in their hands. Sean and Declan, who had been scouts the previous day, found themselves summoned again by Liam. "Sean, Declan," Liam began, his tone measured and thoughtful, "we must ensure no other threats linger in the forest. I sensed something yesterday in those vines, a bitterness I couldn't quite place." His gaze shifted to Ian, the youngest redhead standing nearby, eager as ever. "Go with Ian. Be careful, and keep an eye out for anything unusual." Ian, always curious and adventurous, grinned with youthful confidence. "You can count on us, Liam. We'll be back with news before sundown." And so, the three redheads ventured into the heart of the forest. Their senses were sharp, their steps light, as the dappled sunlight danced on the forest floor. Declan suddenly pointed to a cluster of wildflowers lining their path. "See those?" he whispered, his tone quiet but urgent. "They close when danger is near. Grandpa taught me that when I was your age." Ian's eyes widened as he focused on the flowers, noticing their faint quiver despite the stillness around them. "So, something's watching us," he murmured, his voice caught between wonder and unease. The trio moved cautiously, scanning their surroundings for anything amiss. It wasn't long before they spotted it, a tangled, dark patch of vines sprawled across the forest floor, twisting like malevolent snakes. These vines were nothing like those they'd battled the day before. They shimmered with a sinister sheen, their thorny edges almost glinting in the sunlight. "Poison ivy," Declan whispered, his voice barely audible. His words carried a weight that seemed to settle on all three of them. Poison ivy was a rarity in the Whispering Woods, and it had never been known to grow so aggressively. "This shouldn't be here," Declan muttered, his unease thick in the air. The twisted vines writhed unnervingly, pulsing as if they were alive, searching for something, or someone. Sean unsheathed his small silver knife, its polished blade glinting faintly in the filtered sunlight. This was no ordinary tool, it was the redhead's trusted companion for cutting herbs and dealing with stubborn plants. He held it with purpose. "If we don't stop this now, it'll strangle every plant in its path. We have to act fast." Ian glanced at his blistered hands, the raw skin a vivid reminder of their battle the day before. His stomach churned, but he straightened his back. "Tell me what to do, and I'll do it," he said firmly, his voice steady despite the tremor in his fingers. Sean gave him a quick nod, approval flickering in his eyes. "All right. First, we've got to sever the ivy from the ground roots, it's drawing power from the soil. Declan, you take the left. Ian, handle the right. I'll work on the center." With their plan set, the trio dove in. Their movements were precise and deliberate, their tools slicing through the stubborn ivy. But the vines fought back with a vengeance, twisting and curling around their blades, as though mocking their efforts. Keep going, Sean urged, his voice cutting through the forest's eerie silence. Suddenly, a vine lunged at Ian, lashing out like a whip. Look out! Ian yelped, stumbling backward just in time, his heart hammering against his ribs. The vine recoiled, as if irritated by his quick reflexes. Declan tugged at a particularly thick root, his jaw clenched in frustration. This isn't normal poison ivy, he panted, his hands gripping the slippery vine. It's like it's enchanted. Sean paused for a fraction of a second, his brow furrowing as the realization sank in. His voice dropped, laced with grim determination. Dark magic, he muttered, their words hanging heavy in the air. The forest seemed to shiver in response, the wind rustling the leaves like a warning. The words dark magic sent a collective shiver down their spines. It was a force both feared and loathed, one banished from the Whispering Woods generations ago. But now, it seemed to have crept back in, lurking in the shadows, threatening to reclaim what the forest had fought so hard to protect. As they wrestled with the relentless ivy, a faint rustling from behind froze them in their tracks. Sean gripped his silver knife tighter, while Ian's eyes darted nervously toward the sound. Emerging from the shadows was Roisin, her face set with unflinching determination and a pouch of herbs slung casually over her shoulder, as if she had merely stopped by to deliver freshly baked cookies. Liam sent me, she declared, her voice steady but brimming with urgency. I sensed it too. This isn't just ivy, it's been poisoned by something vile. Without waiting for a reply, Roisin knelt and opened her pouch. From it, she drew a fine powder that shimmered like crushed moonlight. Humming a soft, ancient tune under her breath, she sprinkled the powder over the vines. The sunlight caught the glittering dust as it fell, like a gentle snowfall of stars. The ivy recoiled at once, shuddering as if it had tasted something bitter. It's working! Ian exclaimed, his eyes wide with amazement. His excitement, however, was short-lived. The ivy retaliated, lashing out with renewed fury. A thick vine shot forward and coiled tightly around Declan's leg, yanking him to the ground like a petulant child dragging its toy. Help! Declan cried, frantically clawing at the vine, his composure unraveling. Roisin sprang into action, dropping to her knees beside him. She pressed her hands against the vine's pulsating surface, her voice firm and melodic as she murmured another incantation. The vine slackened, writhing as if recoiling from her touch, and Declan scrambled free, panting heavily. We need more than powder, Sean said, his voice tight with urgency. He turned to Roisin, his gaze steady. What else have you got? Roisin's mind raced, her sharp eyes darting through the forest as she pieced together a plan. There's an ancient potion, she said finally, her voice steady but urgent. Made from elderflower and nightshade. It can weaken dark magic. But there's a problem, the ingredients are rare. Where can we find them? Ian asked, his small frame almost bristling with determination. The elderflowers grow by the waterfall, Roisin explained. She hesitated, her gaze dropping slightly. But the nightshade, it's deep in the shadowed grove. A hushed silence followed her words. The shadowed grove, whispered about in cautionary tales, was a place of legend and dread. Twisted trees clawed at the sky, sunlight dared not linger, and shadows seemed to slither across the ground like living things. It was the last place any redhead wanted to go. But Sean stepped forward, his jaw set like iron. Then we go, he declared, his voice cutting through the tension. Roisin's expression wavered between fear and resolve. I'll lead the way, she said firmly. I know the paths. With that, the four redheads ventured into the forest, their breaths synchronized, their resolve stealing with every step. The trees thickened as they walked, forming an oppressive canopy that blotted out the light. Even the forest seemed to hold its breath, the usual sounds of birds and rustling leaves eerily absent. At last, they arrived at the grove's edge. The air was heavy, laden with a bitter, unfamiliar scent that clung to their nostrils. Ian wrinkled his nose and whispered, "Smells like the forest had a bad meal." Declan cracked a nervous smile, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. Roisin took a deep breath, the faintest tremor betraying her nerves. "Stay close and stay quiet," she murmured, stepping into the grove with measured caution. As they moved deeper, the shadows seemed to shift, stretching unnaturally across the ground as if watching their every move. The silence was unbearable, thick and unnatural, as though the grove itself was waiting for something, or someone. "There," whispered Roisin, pointing to a patch of nightshade nestled between the roots of a gnarled tree. The dark, purple flowers seemed to hum with an eerie energy, glowing faintly in the dim light, a clear sign of their deadly power. Sean crouched carefully, his movements deliberate as he plucked the flowers one by one, dropping them into his pouch. "That's enough," he murmured. "Let's get out of here before." A low, guttural growl cut through the stillness, freezing the words on his lips. From the shadows emerged a creature unlike anything they had ever seen. Its body seemed to ripple with darkness, its glowing red eyes like twin embers, and its claws gleamed like polished steel. "It's a shadow hound," Roisin whispered, her voice tight with both awe and fear. "They guard the grove. Creatures of pure dark magic. Their only purpose is to defend it." Ian's mouth fell open, his gaze fixed on the hound. "Fantastic. Just when I thought this place couldn't get any creepier." "Stay calm," Sean commanded, his hand tightening around the hilt of his silver knife. The blade glinted faintly, a small but reassuring light in the oppressive darkness. "If it's a fight it wants, we'll give it one." "No," Roisin said sharply, stepping forward. "Violence will only feed its strength." Her voice softened as she faced the beast. "We must show it that we mean no harm." The hound's growl deepened as she approached, its fiery eyes narrowing. Roisin held out her hand, her movement slow and deliberate, her voice steady despite the tremor in her knees. "We're here to protect the Whispering Woods," she said, her tone imbued with both courage and sincerity. "We only seek to heal, not to destroy." The hound hesitated, its growl faltering. It sniffed the air, its sharp claws flexing against the forest floor. For a moment, the tension was unbearable, the redheads holding their breath. Then, with a low, reluctant huff, the hound stepped back. Its dark form dissolved into the shadows, leaving nothing but silence in its wake. Ian exhaled noisily, his voice breaking the stillness. "Well, I don't know about you, but I'm officially adding Shadow Beast Whisperer to Roisin's list of talents." Sean allowed himself a small smile. "Let's get back before anything else decides to test our purpose." The redheads let out a collective sigh of relief, their breaths visible in the cool, dense air. Though their hearts still pounded from the encounter, their determination carried them forward as they hurried back to the Whispering Woods, the nightshade safely tucked away in Sean's pouch. The familiar clearing greeted them, bathed in the soft glow of the afternoon sun. Without hesitation, they began their work. Guided by Roisin's steady hand, they crushed the nightshade and elderflower into a fine, pungent paste. The mixture shimmered faintly, an unearthly light emanating from the combination of nature's power and ancient knowledge. Sean carried the bowl to the heart of the ivy's infestation, its twisted vines still pulsing weakly as if sensing its imminent demise. Together, the redheads poured the mixture over the dark tangle, their voices low as they chanted the ancient words Roisin had taught them. The ivy recoiled violently at first, writhing and twisting in a desperate attempt to resist. But as the paste seeped into its roots, the dark energy faded. The vines quivered one last time before collapsing, their sinister sheen evaporating into the air. The forest exhaled, its oppressive weight lifting at last. A hush fell over the clearing, broken only by the return of birdsong and the rustling of leaves in a gentle breeze. The scent of peace, a mix of elderflower and earthy musk, drifted through the air, wrapping around the redheads like a comforting embrace. Exhausted but triumphant, they stood side by side, their faces streaked with dirt and resolve. For a moment, no one spoke, content to watch the Whispering Woods come alive again. The redhead's story paused here as Grandpa's voice carried on. Later, seated together once more at the stone table, Grandpa leaned forward, his eyes sparkling with a mix of wisdom and mischief. "And that, my boy," he said, his voice warm and brimming with pride, "is what makes the redheads true heroes. They didn't just face the darkness, they met it with courage in their hearts and kindness in their actions." The little boy nodded earnestly, his small hands clutching the edges of his pillow like a knight gripping his shield. "They are the bravest heroes of all, Grandpa," he said, his voice filled with wonder and admiration. Grandpa chuckled softly, reaching out to ruffle the boy's hair. "That they are, my lad. That they are," he murmured, his tone carrying the weight of the story's lessons and the love he felt for his grandson.